Welcome to Nick and Dave Deep Dive the Metaverse, a podcast exploring cult classics, subculture, and geek media. I'm Nick.
And I'm Dave.
And we will be your humble narrators for this deep dive of Stanley Kubrick's 1971, what do we call it? Dystopian, juvenile, delinquent, black comedy, A Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, I don't know if black comedy is where I'd put it, but yeah, definitely this fits firmly in the cult classic section of our mission statement. So
it's all three.
You think so?
Yeah, it's definitely
geek media.
It's geek media is the one that's stretching it the most, but it's dystopian future, so it's sort of genre sci-fi.
Yeah,
it definitely is influential in genre films, and
I think this is a natural fit for what we're looking to do. And it's been a long time since I watched it. The last time I watched it was with you when we were teenagers.
Yeah, I was gonna say usually I ask, what's your history with this, but I was pretty much 100% sure the first time we saw this movie was together.
And that was the only time I saw it.
Oh, really? So yeah, you, me, and our buddy Lance from Florida. We watched this he lived in like an accessory dwelling unit next to his folks' place. And we watched this in a documentary about the Church of Satan too. I think that was the other thing I rented at Hollywood Video that day.
Yeah, so this movie is really interesting because this was actually Kubrick's fastest film to release movie in his career at about 1 year. So it was very, very quick that they put this out, and his original cut was over 4 hours long before they actually brought in editors other than him. Yeah, and it was originally rated X.
Yeah, I was aware of that, and not that there was a 4 hour cut.
Yeah.
God, I bet they shot the whole book because there's not a ton from the book that's missing in the film, and I bet they just shot everything.
Yeah, I'm sure that they basically used the book like a script and just went for it. And the other crazy thing is I usually have the budget and box office numbers for movies, and this is the biggest difference I've ever seen. The budget was $1.3 million and the box office was $114 million. So that's huge. And we say, we're talking about millions here, which $100 million movie in modern day is nothing. But this was 1971.
Yeah, this movie was a cultural phenomenon. And it was sort of like when Kubrick's batting 1,000 as far as everything he puts out changes cinema. Yeah. Because this came after 2001, A Space Odyssey, Space Odyssey is the David Bowie album.
I would watch a 2001 Space Odyssey mashup movie. That'd be cool.
Yeah. And so it's, Kubrick's just like dropping, classics, everything he releases.
Yeah, this is insane when it's almost 100 times the budget is its box office. That's nuts.
Yeah, and he was really very picky about how the movie was exhibited. He wanted it shown through a certain kind of lens, a 1.66 projector lens, and he literally bought them and sent his assistant out to theaters that didn't have the correct lens.
Wow.
And provided them to theaters. When they did the premiere, the theater had white walls, and he had them painted matte black, so there wouldn't be glare from the white walls.
Why would you have white walls in a theater? That's just stupid.
Yeah, that's what Kubrick thought too.
Yeah, so this movie was like properly a big fucking deal.
Yeah, and that's if you also think about it, ended up getting pulled from circulation in the UK, and so
that just makes it more notorious.
Exactly. Yeah, so people had to be trading tapes around and stuff to watch it. It's really pretty crazy. Yeah,
I mean, I'm looking forward to this deep dive. This was one of the ones that, in my mind, is a true cult classic. I mean, there's a lot of movies that you could call cult classics, but in the pantheon of cult classics, this one's up there.
Yeah, it made a huge cultural impact. Sort of like launched the glam rock era. It was a big influence on David Bowie stylistically. I guess I just alluded that he had an album called Space Oddity. He was a huge Kubrick fan. And Kubrick's films really influenced his music. And then, of course, the punk rock movement borrowed heavily from the aesthetics of Clockwork Orange, too.
For sure.
I mean, and I rocked a bowler hat and real horror show boots for a good long while. That was my go-to look.
Yeah, it's a good style. I mean, I think any time that you wear white in any sort of alternative fashion, you're borrowing from the Droogs.
Mm-hmm. I don't think I could get those white jeans on anymore. I think actually I don't even think I have them anymore. Luckily, so
I had a pair of white jeans, and I've since parted with them in the condoing last time we moved.
Oh yeah, good call.
Yeah, I knew I'd never wear them again.
Mm-hmm. They're just for fancy dress parties. Basically, like if you're gonna dress up like a Clockwork Orange.
For sure. All right, so let's turn it around a little bit. What have you been up to lately?
What have I been up to? I've seen a couple films in the theater.
Holy shit!
I know, it's a normalcy is returning. I saw Army of the Dead, the latest Zack Snyder joint.
Oh man, I was thinking about watching that when I saw it on HBO Max.
No, it's on Netflix.
Oh, is it Netflix? Yeah, I saw it on some streaming service, and I was like, "This looks cool." I like Dave Bautista. Dave
Bautista is great. It's probably his best performance yet.
Awesome.
And I mean, I'm out of the closet now as a Snyder brony. I've come to accept it.
Oh man.
I really enjoy his movies. It's you know what it's like is like Aliens or Predator or anything where you have a group of mercenaries getting picked off while they're doing a terrible job.
Yeah, I watched the trailer. So if any of the divers haven't watched the trailer, I haven't seen the movie, but it was basically like, okay, there's like zombies. It's like a zombie apocalypse kind of deal. And they get a bunch of people, they assemble a team, and they send them out to do something. And so
it's a big heist in Las Vegas.
It's like, oh yeah, there's money in a safe and they need to go get it. And there's zombies around the entire place.
Exactly.
So it's like a heist film and a zombie apocalypse film and kind of an A-Team vibe.
Yes.
And
you nailed it.
It sold me with the trailer. I'm definitely going to watch that movie.
It's very enjoyable, but don't get attached to any of the characters.
Well, as a George R. Martin fan, I'm good.
If you like, when you see the team, you're like, that's my guy. You're like, oh no, you shouldn't have. And then last night we saw Cruella.
Oh, okay. I'm not going to see that one.
Yeah, that's not your jam. It's like The Devil Wears Prada meets the Joker.
Huh.
It's a weird movie. It's a gorgeous looking movie, like cinematography, costumes, everything's great. But
I didn't see the Joker because I don't like that kind of movie either. So I think
this is a double not for Dave movie. But I think people will enjoy it. I'm starting to get leery of Disney, of the power of the mouse.
You're not already leery of them. You're starting to get leery. They're the media evil overlords.
I know, but they make all this stuff that we love.
I know, but you could just say the exact same thing about Amazon. Who are the retail overlords, but they sell all the stuff that we love.
Yeah, and they just bought MGM, so it's like they own James Bond, and I love those old James Bond movies.
That's true.
So it's like, yeah, it's a perfectly enjoyable movie that after it was over, I was like, but should this movie exist? I don't know. But then should The Mandalorian exist? Should any of these things that we enjoy, should they exist? Are they art or are they just a product? I started having, sort of philosophical questions. Like I've been questioning everything since Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat just made me wonder what's the point of these genre movies? Why are we watching them?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't know. I think that Filoni has brought an artistic vision to the Star Wars stuff, and so it's worthy. Yeah. It's not just commodification.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what a lot of these people like Gillespie that directed Cruella made a really great movie using Disney IP. Like he made the movie that he wanted to make, and it's artistically awesome. But it's the villain from 101 Dalmatians. It's just why does this exist?
Yeah, who cares?
Why are we remaking all of the old Disney cartoons as live action? I don't know.
Well, I mean,
but I liked it. That's the two sides of it. I enjoyed the movie, but I just question it.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't spend money to go see that for sure, but I can see why you did, because you like all kinds of nerdy things, I guess, that I'm not into.
Everything. Yeah, I'm a shotgun nerd. Just blast everything.
I'm way more focused. So yeah, I don't know. That sounds cool though. I haven't been to the movies in a while. I used to at my old place when living in my old place. I would always go to the movies on the hottest days of the year because a few hours in AC. But now in my new house, I have AC, so I don't have to escape. I'd rather watch movies at home than the theater, 100% of the time.
These social distance theaters, though, it's so nice. It's like you get to see it in the theater, but it's a pretty limited audience of people that really want to be there.
Do you have to wear a mask?
Well, not if you're eating or drinking, because then
so you order.
If you're stuffing food in your gob, then COVID can't come out of it.
Yeah, we know this, but and I only say that you have a drink next to you or whatever because I'm vaccinated and it's fully set in, so I don't feel like I need to wear a mask if I'm watching a movie in a place.
I didn't have any concessions at Army of the Dead, and I did kind of pull my mask down because it was getting a little stifling.
I know there's going to be people, with our thousands of listeners that are like, my Meemaw and Peepaw both died from the COVIDs and you're a villain. I'd be like, no, that's not what I'm saying.
That's not what, yeah.
I agree it's real, but I think at this point, if you're vaccinated,
Well, that's
live your life.
Your chances, if you're vaccinated, your chances of catching COVID are next to none. And your chances of shedding viral particles are even lower than your chances of catching it.
Yeah, and so by taking off the mask, I'm putting myself at risk and not really others, and I'm firmly okay with self-risk. Mm-hmm. So that's where I stand on that.
Okay.
Now that the divers know where we stand.
So let's talk podcast fuel.
No.
What have you been up to? Oh my God. And you had something this time.
Nick.
I know. I'm such a Mike hog. What have you been up to, Dave?
You're such a Marsha Brady. Actually, I have a couple of things that I've been doing a lot lately. I've been working a lot on revising my Dungeons and Dragons setting. I've actually been putting in serious hours on that every day. It's a game setting I've been running and playing in for about 20 years, and I'm just doing a full-on overhaul. I'm giving it kind of the 5th edition treatment, which is a streamline and an update and more focus rather than try to cover every single trope. Just be like, this is what I'm into. And I'll reveal more of that someday. But the more interesting thing to the divers, probably I went camping over the weekend. It's Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully people got outside. And
we had great weather.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was like low 70s, and I'm in the sun in a treed area. We had a river rolling by. There's literally bald eagles flying and playing with each other overhead. There's a beaver in the river up the way. If you walk up, you can see it's a home and everything. It's literally just picturesque. I'm walking through the river in my flip-flops and getting my toes wet. It was just really nice.
There is something. Bald eagles are so freaking majestic. I don't know if it's just American brainwashing or what it is, but when
it's just good branding.
Yeah, when an eagle soars over, especially if it goes yeah, it's like, oh my God, God bless America.
Yeah, and so that was pretty cool. I had a really good time, and Memorial Day weekend is always it's like the herald of summer, you know? And so here we are. It's nice out, and it's going to be hot this week.
I know. I can finally wear those white Sambas that I bought now that we're past Memorial Day.
Oh, you have white Sambas?
Oh, yeah. They're so clean. I've been afraid to wear them.
Do they have black stripes or just white on white on white?
Black stripes.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, but I've been totally sketched. I put them on and I gone outside and then it was cloudy and I was like, no, I'll wait. Because they're just so clean. I just can't.
Man, I don't even own any white shoes. I feel like maybe I should.
When you're all black with white shoes, super fresh. Run DMC style.
Is that the look I'm going after? Is the super fresh?
Well, you do. I do have an Adidas tracksuit.
I actually have a couple of them.
Yeah. So you're black tracksuit with white Sambas. Chef's kiss. That looks so good.
All right. So now let's get into this podcast feel.
Yeah, finally. After I've already damn near crushed a double IPA. So, keeping with the theme of the movie, I really wanted a lactose beer because our droogies love to drink that Milk Plus. That's what sharpens them up for the ultraviolence.
Yeah, which is just milk plus narcotics.
Mm-hmm. And so, well, we're doing Milk Plus beer in the form of a lactose double IPA. This is from Drecker Brewing, which we've had some beer from them before, and it's called Involuntary Narcissistic Rage, which is also on brand.
Yeah, this is a very perfect choice because it's got this guy's like tearing open a smiley face to reveal a necro head, but the hands that are tearing it open are white gloved,
like the Mickey Mouse cartoon gloves.
Yeah.
So, Involuntary Narcissistic Rage is a lactose double IPA brewed with Vic Secret, Belma, and Huel Mountain hops. It's soft and juicy with flavors and aromas of pineapple, passion fruit, and strawberry. And Drecker kind of has all sort of Viking theme. We had the other beer we had from them was that Odin is our overlord.
Yeah.
They're always sort of metal themed beers, and they're from Fargo, North Dakota.
This is really good. It's a really juicy beer. It's I can definitely taste it's a double, but it's good. I like it. It's something that I definitely have another one of.
Very nice. Well, why don't we take a break and then we'll get into this deep dive.
All right.
Welcome back, divers, and let's get into this. Clockwork Orange, 1971, Stanley Kubrick. The book's divided into 3 segments, and I kind of divided my notes that way too. So we start with part 1, Alex's World. We open up, zoomed in on our humble narrator, Alex, and we zoom out to reveal his droogs. That would be Pete, Georgie, and Dim, and they're in the Korova Milk Bar.
And one thing that kind of interests me about the opening to this movie, even before the zoom in on Alex, it opens up with classical music, and it immediately reminded me of the Lugosi Dracula.
Oh, yeah.
Opens up.
Interesting.
It automatically invoked that mood for me, and I wonder if that was intentional.
Yeah, I think Kubrick is definitely using some of that. You know, we keep talking about expressionism in film, and this is definitely an expressionist film, and he is hearkening back to several older cinema forms.
Yeah, and this opening scene in the milk bar, it's not a lot. It's a lot of show don't tell initially, and they're drinking milk, and then eventually a narrator, Alex himself, kicks in and he talks about the Milk Plus and all of that. And
yeah,
it's what's immediately striking is the way they look. They're like head to toe white clothes, but they have big black boots on.
Yeah,
and they have like jock straps with cups on outside of their pants.
Yeah,
and bowler hats.
It's a cricket codpiece. When you'd wear it under your cricket uniform, not on top of it. But yeah, it's quite a look. It's not the look as it is described in the book, which I thought was really interesting. In the book, they're wearing tights with a codpiece under it, and everyone's codpiece has a distinctive embossing on it. Like Dim's has a clown face that you can see through the tights. And then
they did that. They changed it.
And then they wore like a waistcoat, so what we would call a vest with big shoulder pads.
Weird.
Yeah. And so this, I suppose that would have become iconic too if they had worn it in this movie, but it, because especially so often you see the novel with a picture of a proper droog from the film on it.
Yeah.
And so I was a little surprised that the book in this one regard, departed quite a bit.
I guess it's fine. It doesn't really matter. They're dressed in an ostentatious, weird way that sets them apart. It's essentially their gang colors.
Yes, exactly. And some of just other things that jumped out at me right away is, I think this is the first instance of a Kubrickism called the Kubrick stare, where the person, they have their head tilted forward and the camera is close up, zoomed in on their face. He uses this in like The Shining and Full Metal Jacket. It's just a Kubrickism when you have a deranged protagonist.
Yeah, and it's pretty effective at conveying Alex's mindset. And I don't know if more happens in that scene, but they leave, and immediately there's a drunk guy underneath singing under a bridge.
Yeah.
And it reminds me that immediately sent my mind to a different place where it reminded me of a Midsummer Night's Dream, Shakespeare.
Oh, yeah.
Where there's a hobo who has like a monologue, like a soliloquy, and it's almost like a bridge between two scenes.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but think that this also is intentional. It's hearkening to the bard himself.
Yeah, I think that is probably Anthony Burgess and not Kubrick, because that is in the book. And Burgess is one of those a writer's writer, very literary guy.
Yeah, for sure. He's read all of Shakespeare's works.
Oh, certainly. I mean, and he invented a whole goofy language for them to speak in this book, and he's that kind of wordsmith. So I think
he's like a Tolkien, but
into brutal ultraviolence.
Yeah, alternative Tolkien.
Right. Before we got too far from that, the last thing I wanted to shout out was Wendy Carlos, that Moog synthesizer. It's very eerie, the theme of the movie there.
Okay. Yeah, it sounded really good. I think that the music in this movie is one of the high points, actually.
Yeah, I've been playing that soundtrack quite a bit, and it's mostly Beethoven, so that's a different thing for me.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say it's No Junkie XL.
Yeah, that's who would do it now in the Zack Snyder Clockwork Orange.
Could you imagine a Snyderverse Clockwork Orange?
1/3 of the movie is slow motion.
Oh man, I think that would actually. I think I would watch that.
I would watch it, but it would be horrific. So like you say, they come across this unhoused gentleman he's out singing the songs of his father.
Is that the new term? He can't just be a drunken old man.
He's a drunken old man. That's true. But it's implied that he lives in this underpass.
That he lives there. Okay. Yeah.
And they put the boot to him.
They just beat the hell out of him.
Yeah, and it's pretty rough. But things get rougher. They steal a car, a Durango 95, and they go out joyriding, and they're playing Hogs of the Road, where they're running people off the roads.
Yeah, I wanted to touch just briefly on the fight where they're beating up the old man, and I want to say that they did not spend top dollar on a fight choreographer or a fight director, because it basically looks like poor tumbling and pro wrestling all together.
Oh, that's not the fight with the old man. That's when they run into Billy Boy.
Well, no, it gets worse.
Oh.
It gets worse. It starts with badly choreographed fighting. It wasn't just them laying the boots like real punks would do.
Yeah.
It was just silly, and it gets worse as you go on. That's just a sort of a thing. Like Christopher Lee would have done this way better. Like
I could see that. Yeah, because I did brush over that. They run into their rival gang, Billy Boy and his droogs.
Yeah.
And they're dressed more like bikers. And I think
it's just a brief encounter with these guys.
But they have this sort of West Side Story kind of brawl in an old theater. They were gonna assault this girl, and our focal point droogs interrupt the other droogs, and they get into this brawl, and it's very like over the top pro wrestling stuff, like you said.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, you kind of brush over it, but you say they're about to assault this girl. No, they literally had torn her clothes off and were pinning her down to rape her. This isn't. I mean, it's not needed. You get what they're doing. You get what's happening. It doesn't actually have to be that graphic. I feel like this was, and this is another theme along with bad pro wrestling, is yet another reason to put naked people on the screen. It's like he takes every possible opportunity.
Yeah, and I didn't know exactly when we'd get into it, but it does have to be, especially watching it now, the sexual violence is tough. It's the hardest thing from the movie to sit through.
It actually ruins the movie. I'll just go ahead and put it out there right now. I really came into this wanting to love this movie, but the constant sexual violence, because using rape as a weapon is like one of the most horrific war crimes that happens in the world, and using it as a plot gimmick is also really weak storytelling.
Yeah, there's in the upcoming scene, I'll get into this a little bit more. There's something behind it from Anthony Burgess, but I do agree, and this has been, you know, of all the things that we've covered on this podcast, this has been the one that Lisa was like boycotting. Yeah. I've had to watch this movie.
I watched this alone also.
Yeah, I've had to watch this movie when I had the house to myself, essentially.
Yeah.
And Lisa said yesterday, I'll be glad after you record, so it's not a presence in the house anymore. Because I do go hard, and I watch documentaries and listen to the score and all that stuff. And she's like, it's been like Clockwork Orange has been like a cloud in our house for a week.
Yeah, and I have one of my bullet pointed notes here is that this is not good cinema.
That's a controversial.
It's just not. It's not enjoyable. It makes a statement, and it's ham-fisted storytelling. It could have been done with other plot devices. This is just this is like the I don't even know who the shock jock of today is. This is just intentionally shocking, but weakly done.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that. I have a different take, but I'm not going to disagree with what you're saying there.
So going back to the travel scene to the next rape, they get in the Durango 95, which of course is an amazing car. It's actually in real life an Adams Brothers 1969 Probe 16, which is a custom sports car one-off. It is amazing.
A 3-off.
Well, sure. There's always copies made if the first one is awesome.
Yeah, so it is one of 3 of those cars produced. I had that in my notes, but I should have known you would have got it.
Yeah, that car was just so cool. I was immediately smitten by that car. I paused it. I looked it up. I started looking at pictures of it and reading about it.
It has the weirdest, like, I don't know, you would call it a cabin, but like the seating area of the car is so bizarrely laid out with that center console recessed seat. So it's like, it seats 4 people, but they're staggered, like sort of zigzaggy in the car.
It's really weird. It's almost like you have 2 jet cockpits next to each other, and they're offset.
It's very weird, but a very, very striking car. And that whole scene, they do this sort of, it looks really corny, like the rear projection of the country scenery whipping by while they're driving.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was really odd. But then in preparation of an upcoming episode, I watched the original 1954 The Fast and the Furious.
Okay.
And that's how all of the hot rodding scenes look in that movie. So he's basically using the technique of old juvenile delinquent movies from the 50s to create this is the future of juvenile delinquency.
Yeah, it's really interesting how they do that, and it's crazy that they were able to just go and steal this car just like that would happen.
If you want a motor car, you pluck it from the sky.
Yeah.
Or pluck it from a tree, I think is what he says.
Yeah, there's no way that this would just be street parked, keys in, or whatever.
Well, they had the top off of it, so I guess they just hopped in it.
Yeah.
And so they arrive at this ultra-modernist country home, and I capitalized home because there's literally a sign in capital letters outside that says home.
Yeah.
And
it's a really cool looking set. I thought this was awesome.
Yeah, that's a really great house for sure.
I'm sure they probably just knew somebody who had an awesome house and used it as a set.
I think so. And they perpetrate a brutal home invasion and gang rape. And this is the rape that I remember when we watched this the first time, thinking the hero of this movie is not about to rape this woman. And then he does. And I was like,
yeah, they beat the shit out of this guy and they cripple him. And then they gang rape his wife, and later you learn that she eventually, it basically mentally breaks her and she dies.
Yeah.
It's just like, come on. Are you supposed to enjoy this movie? Is this a movie you're supposed to like? Or are they trying to offend you? Is that the goal?
Both. I think it's supposed to be both titillating and horrifying.
I think anybody that actually enjoyed that scene is a deranged person.
I would think that's probably true. But this is where I wanted to bring this up, like what the root of this all is. So Anthony Burgess, the writer, it's very clear in the book, especially because he is literally writing a book called A Clockwork Orange, that the writer is a stand-in for the author. And so during World War II, he was stationed in Gibraltar and his wife was back home in London, and she was brutally assaulted and raped by a group of U.S. servicemen.
So this was just him writing about, his life.
Sort of, yeah. Like it's almost the thing it made me think of was The Crow and James O'Barr, and how it all spun out of his kind of revenge fantasy about the people, because his wife had been killed by a drunk driver. Oh. And that ended up inspiring that story. And I think him processing the trauma of what had happened, because like the wife in the story, his wife essentially died from alcoholism after this had happened. And it does seem like he was kind of working through that in the process of writing this book.
Yeah, I think so. If you're trying to tell a story and you're attempting to show that these boys, these droogs, are very bad people, because obviously in the arc of the movie, the first act is basically just showing that Alex and his buddies are just really bad dudes.
How deranged they are.
And this was just this is just too much. You don't need that in order to accomplish your storytelling point.
No, I agree. Poor Gene Kelly. This whole Alex is singing in the rain through this whole scene. Yeah. And he was very offended by how that song got used.
Yeah.
And Malcolm McDowell, who plays Alex, he said he met Gene Kelly at a party, and Gene Kelly just turned around and walked off without shaking his hand. He took it very personally that they did this.
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't sue them or something.
Yeah, but I think, you license the music from the publisher situation. But oof.
Yeah, so that was a brutal scene and not necessary. And so then they go back to the milk bar.
Yep. And just have a nightcap, and Alex and Dim get into it because what are the rules? Dim basically just blows a raspberry at a lady that was singing in the bar, but Alex was a big fan of classical music and he liked the song, so he waxed Dim and the Yarbles, and it sort of plants the seed of the end of the gang.
Yeah, basically he hits his bro, and they have an argument, and they essentially break up. Mm-hmm. And that's the end of it. And then Alex goes back to his house, and this place is so retro. I mean, obviously then it would have been ultra modern in its decor.
It's really weird. So you see him walking through the Thamesmead Estates. That's the actual housing blocks that they filmed this in. And it's very austere, brutalist architecture. And I had the feeling that the Thamesmead, because it's sort of a Nestorius housing estate, was old, was post-war.
Yeah.
It was literally built in 1968.
Huh.
So it was already like in disrepair just 2 years later, like kind of severely, impoverished.
Yeah, it seemed like just kind of a nasty ghetto. Like it wasn't nice at all. And when you're in Alex's house, the decor is crazy, and he goes into his room, and there's like a huge painting of a naked lady, and then he opens a drawer, and there's a snake in there.
Basil.
And he's playing Ludwig van.
Yeah, he's a huge fan of classical music, in particular Beethoven. That was the tagline on the poster. It said, being the story of a young man whose principal interests are rape, ultraviolence, and Beethoven.
Okay.
And yeah, so like there's erotic paintings everywhere. Kubrick's wife actually painted those, Christiane Kubrick. And he has a transcriptor's hydraulic reference turntable sitting there. That's right now a 4,000 pound or $76 turntable if you wanted to buy one of those.
For a retro one or like a modern?
One that's built right now.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Because they were always like, this is always like
always top tier.
A couture item, like a bespoke item.
So he lives in the ghetto, but he has that.
Yes. What would cost 4,000 pounds now? So who knows what it cost in 1968 or whenever they filmed this.
That's crazy.
But he uses the mini cassette player instead. He doesn't even put a record on. I thought that was really weird.
Yeah, and I mean, and so this whole time I'm watching this movie, and by this point in the movie, I'm like, oh my God, how did I watch this before? I'm not enjoying this.
Oh, okay.
And then was his mom or his dad? Somebody says you're late for school.
Yes.
And I was like, school? This guy looks like he's 30. Fucking casting fail.
You're really close. So Malcolm McDowell was 27/28 while they're filming this movie.
No high schooler.
Alex is at this point in the movie 15 years old.
Okay, so they fucking shit the bed.
They're way off, yes, because this is the first time you realize that he's supposed to be a teenager. And he does look young, like you said, in his 20s.
Yeah, he's a young man, maybe.
But yeah, his mom comes in and she wants him to wake up, and she says how he hasn't gone to school at all this week. And he basically bags out of school because he says he's got a headache. And when he finally does get up, his PO is there in the house sitting on his parents' bed. And they have a weird interaction with each other.
Like he grabs his package and is like squeezing his goods.
Yeah, it was very much more molesty than it is portrayed in the book.
So if he had been 15, that would have been another completely uncalled for scene. But in my mind, where Alex is 30, I just thought, these guys are dysfunctional. They do not have a good relationship.
Well, if you get yourself in trouble with the law and your parole officer comes over and grabs you by the yarbles, well, I mean, I don't know what recourse you have with the state, but I would suggest you look into it. They're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, that's a parole violation on their part.
Yeah, you tell your PO that. Yeah. You're in violation of my parole. You can't touch me like that.
You're supposed to look after me. I'm the bad guy here.
But yeah, so they get through that, and then Alex gets dressed up in his day platties and heads down to the record stop.
And so I just wanted to say, before he leaves his house, as he kind of goes through the house, the set there is remarkably nice. Like, it's such a well done, well thought out set. I thought the set of his house, it was really done well, and it kind of feels like this movie, the more as we get into it, it feels like the standout part of the movie is actually the sets and the costuming.
Hey, that's a great time to mention John Barry and Milena Canonero. who are the production designer and costume designer for this film.
It's so good. Like it's so good. Like I'm enjoying the aesthetics of the movie a lot. It looks so good, and the shooting, the camera work, and all that. It's just amazing. But the content is crap.
Dave, don't skip ahead to what worked for you and what didn't work for you.
Because we're only a third through, and I'm already like, can I shut this off now?
It's like you're reading my notes from over there.
But yeah, so we're a third through, and I'm like, man, fuck me. And then he goes to the record store, and Alex is a super creep.
Yeah.
He's creeping hard on these ladies. And I guess it's not really worth saying someone's a creeper because it's established that he's a serial rapist.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And I don't know. In the book, the girls are incredibly young. They're 10 years old.
See, like in the movie, though, he's 27, 28 in reality or whatever. The girls look 25.
Yeah, they look approximately the same age.
Yeah, they look like...
And they have a pretty actual, like, sort of fun threesome with each other.
Yeah, it seems like it's totally, like, cool. They're into it. And to me, the scene just seemed like another excuse to have naked people on the screen.
Yeah, they've shot a 20-minute threesome scene with the three of them and then speed it up to, like, I don't know, like...
to Benny Hill levels of silly.
Yeah, because they're playing the William Tell overture, the Lone Ranger theme, and have this high speed threesome with each other, and it's really like it's fun. It's
supposed
scene.
To be playful, yeah.
Yeah, and it's after what we've seen of this guy, it's quite a change of mood. But that scene is actually in the book. I thought was one of the most horrific scenes in the book because the girls are so young.
Yeah.
So I was very pleased they had the sense to make them grown-ups.
I think that Kubrick, even though he clearly wants to be shocking, he knows you can't have pedophilia in a movie.
It's too much.
That's
although he did direct the movie Lolita.
Oh, goddamn.
But there's no sex scenes in that movie.
Okay.
It's just implied pedophilia.
All right,
so
Kubrick,
let's talk about so this is a natural point to bring up. Is something very frustrating to me as a fan of cinema that so much of the greats, like the great artists, the great directors, the great films, are so like cringe, like
yeah,
as a massive understatement, like. The violence against women, just everything, all this stuff is aged terribly. And I just who was thinking this was a good idea in the 60s?
I think that we don't have to continue considering them great. They may have been considered greats at the time, but I feel perfectly comfortable judging historical figures by my morality. And I think that to give people a pass based on the time when it's within living memory. Yeah. It's not like we're talking about
ancient
Genghis Khan, you know. We're talking about the 70s. It's like we were born in the 70s. It's not insane that people could not be rapey, you know? Like, come on. We don't have to consider that great.
That's true. So, let's think of some of the other people like Woody Allen and...
Don't like him. Pedo.
Yeah. And who's the other one that lives in exile? Rosemary's Baby.
I know who you're talking about. I can't remember the name. But yeah, so for me, if someone is a morally reprehensible figure, I tend to just avoid their art. It's the same reason you can't buy a Burzum album. The dude is a scumbag. Yeah. You can't support that. And I think it's a lot of people say you have to separate the art from the artist, but I think that there's such a vast amount of art present that you can choose to consume that which doesn't support reprehensible people.
Yeah. I think you're right. I do think you're right about that.
Like, why can't we call Snyder one of the greats? He's not a pedo.
That's true. No one has ever, fingers crossed, knock on wood, no one has ever said, a lot of people have criticized his movies, but no one has ever criticized the man of Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
As far as we can tell, he's a stand-up dude.
Yeah, they said he's like a really cool guy. Like when he was doing 300, he worked out with all those dudes, and he formed like a brotherhood, a camaraderie with the actors and stuff. Seems like a nice guy. We can call that great.
Yeah, I do think in the future he's a director that will get studied. I think he's not appreciated in his own time.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
anyway.
I mean, so in this movie,
in the interest of keeping this moving,
I'm trying to appreciate all the things that I see in this movie, and I think that there are constantly things to appreciate, but there are also I hate that they made the main character so completely unlikable. It's kind of like, to a lesser extent, when you watch the Fantastic Beasts movies, they made a character who has negative charisma. He's just so utterly boring and unlikable. It's like, I'm watching the movie for the scenery. This movie is like that, but like amplified.
I don't think Malcolm McDowell has negative charisma. I actually think the only thing that makes this movie watchable is the fact that Malcolm McDowell is so charming that somehow you can watch a character that is on paper horrible. And as the movie goes on, as we get into the next third of the movie, you start feeling sympathy for him.
Man, I never did.
You never did?
I actually, every time Alex got like shit hammered, I was like, yeah. I was cheering for the people who kicked his ass every time.
So let's get into that. So after he wakes up from his post-coital nap, and he's surprised in the lobby of his housing block, the Droogies are there, and they've got mutiny on the mind. They're trying to displace him from his role as leader of their gang.
Yeah, I was studying their costumes in this scene, and I find that I like the short top hat the best.
Georgie?
Yeah, I like that hat the best, much better than the rest. I think I look pretty good in one of those.
A short top hat. What's who's the droog that's not Georgie or Dim? Who's the one that never gets involved in anything?
I didn't even write.
He wears a beret.
Yeah, the beret was just completely just right off. That's the lamest of the hats.
Yeah, but he's the only guy that you never see do anything terrible.
Yeah, because he's like an also-ran. He's basically an extra.
He's the tag-along in their group. Yeah. Because when they get into this really awesome slow-motion fight where they're walking along the canal, and it's super iconic scene of the four of them walking in slow motion that like every director has copied since then.
Yeah.
And Alex whacks Georgie in the yarbles, and
he just like, they're walking four abreast, and he takes his cane and just wham, like hits him right in the junk.
Yeah, and then Dim swings the chain at him, and he ducks it, kicks him into the river, and then slices his hand with his cane knife.
Yeah, because the cane has a hidden knife.
That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I've seen that one so many times.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for the ultra violence of bad guys on bad guys. I think this is good, and it's good to show that he was completely he was pretty much betrayed, but the betrayal was not totally complete, because then they go and they're going to commit another crime. Yeah,
they stop in at the pub they like to frequent. That's not the Milk Bar. It's the Duke of New York, and Alex is entertaining Georgie's plan, and he's heard about this house. It's a health spa or a health farm, like a rich people retreat. And there's a crazy cat lady that lives there, and there's serious money to be made to go and rob her. And the robbery goes bad. Alex bashes the cat lady's head in with a giant phallus. And then when the police are coming, Dim bashes Alex in the head with a milk bottle, and they leave him for the coppers to pick up.
Yeah, that was the ultimate betrayal is after the crime, when the cops have already been called, they knock him out by bashing him with a milk bottle so that he can get caught.
Mm-hmm. And it turns out, the corrective advisor shows up, and he's just come from the hospital, and the lady died. So Alex is going away for murder.
Yep. I liked that the cat lady was putting up a fight. She wasn't a fainting maid. She was feisty.
In the book, she's just a legit old lady, and in this, she's like a yoga enthusiast and like a very fit old lady.
Yeah, and she's pissed.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kills her, and I like that Alex got betrayed because he
deserved it.
He's a douchebag. He deserves it. He treated those guys like shit. He committed a lot of crimes. He got picked up, and of course they take him back for interrogation, and they engage in some good old fashioned illegal policing, which is the standard and has continued to be the standard.
Yeah, and Alex snitches immediately. He's selling out his brothers.
Yeah, he's
a soft boy.
There's no honor among thieves, and this guy really proves it. He's bad to good people, and he's bad to bad people. He's just kind of a douche.
Yeah. Before we wrap up section 1, just the only kind of last shout out is Herman Mackink's rocking machine, the giant phallus sculpture. That's a very famous piece of art. And he also made the Christ Unlimited, the sort of quadruple crucifix thing that Alex had in his bedroom.
Yeah.
So there's just lots of cool pop art all through this movie.
Yeah, I noticed it seemed very like Warhol-ish, a lot of the stuff. And one of the things that I kind of note here is like while he's kind of he's been broken by the cops, of course, and he's weeping and he's ratting on everybody, and he's criticizing all the other criminals and saying how bad they were and all this stuff, and how he had been dragged into the life by the bad influences, and he's criticizing them, and he is just human garbage.
Yes,
he's a rapist, a murderer, a thief. He's completely useless to society, and it's like he's trying to play the victim. It's just like, well, I hope you get put away, and of course he does.
Yes, so that brings us to part 2, the Ludovico technique. Alex gets 14 years in prison. He's given the prison number 655321. He quickly ingratiates himself with the prison Charlie, as he says. That's Cockney rhyming slang for chaplain. Earning a prison job as his assistant, and he gets to read the big book and listen to classical music, and he's kind of enjoying prison life. It's working out for him.
He basically becomes like a weak ass altar boy. He's not like a hard prison thug or anything. He's just like the most tame. I don't know. He immediately turns his coat.
Yeah, and again, I think they do a good job of showing this. He's a much smaller than a lot of these other guys, even if he is a grown man playing a teenager. In the book, this is a 15-year-old boy being sent to a grown-up, butt-pounding prison.
Yeah, well, they have a few weird moments in here where like he's reading the Bible and he's listening to the classical, and he closes his mind and it delves into Alex's fantasies, and it's just debauchery. And I just wonder, like, what's the story value of this? Was this another excuse to put naked people on the screen?
Yes, and I mean, I think it's just showing how someone like him, how he's always manipulating, right? Where he's given free rein to read the Bible, right? The good book, and this is supposed to be improving him, but he's only reading the dirty parts of the Bible, like, or even in the parts like when he reads about Jesus, the Passion of the Christ, he is the Roman soldier. He's not the Jesus.
Yeah.
So it's like he's just he's just being himself still, and still being terrible, while outwardly he's fooling like the prison chaplain and the people that are watching him. They're
trying to rehabilitate him.
Yeah, they're like, see, look, he's been reading the Bible and he's doing so good, but he's really still just being selfish.
And then it kind of cuts to the scene where some official is entering the prison and is walking through the halls, and they stop into a random room, which of course is Alex's room. And it's crazy how it's decorated. It's all like nudie pictures, Beethoven stuff, and Jesus. So it's just like he brought his home to prison, because that's all the same stuff.
That was the stuff he had in his room. Yeah, totally. He's like what they call an institutionalized individual, right? He lives in the housing projects. He's in that school to prison pipeline thing, and he's just moving right along. As you said, the minister of the interior shows up and is doing a prison visit, and Alex gets himself selected for the Ludovico technique, an experimental treatment that it's supposed to cure a prisoner and they can be released within a fortnight.
Yeah, he kind of volunteers. He speaks up and brings attention to himself, and he wants to get out. He's tired of being in prison.
Yeah, he's been in there for 2 years at this point. There's a cool Van Gogh by way of Gustave Doré homage that happens there. There's a painting called Prisoners Exercising, where it's a bunch of prisoners walking in a circle.
Yeah.
And they basically, recreate that painting
with people,
with real people. And
I thought that was an interesting visual, like that moment was actually kind of interesting to look at on screen. And I just think one thing that struck me was that guy, that minister of the interior, he kind of looked like Prince Philip.
He did. Yes. No, I saw it too. I that has to be intentional. He's supposed to look like the British establishment. Like
he looks like Prince Philip. It was crazy. I was like, is this a 1970s Philip?
They had him cameo in it. Yeah, and he said a line of dialogue I wanted to quote here, because he's wanting to get these petty thugs out of the prison, and he says, "Soon we may be needing all our prison space for political offenders."
Oh yeah.
So the book is set, and the movie, I assume, is set in 1980. And I think that's really intentional. We're in the run-up to 1984.
Sure.
Like, it's becoming that totalitarian Britain that you see in Orwell. And so these are just like the early steps down that road.
Yeah, there were a couple of other clues that I was reading articles and stuff on this movie, like the way that they refer to different people and whatnot. They essentially, the state is the power. The monarchy has been abolished. Is sort of the backdrop here. Yeah,
and they wear the prison uniform is like a blue Nazi uniform. Like there's even red armbands.
Sure. Yeah, they look very, very Nazi-ish.
Super fascistic. So Alex gets himself transferred to the Ludovico Medical Center, and we meet Dr. Brodsky and his assistant, Dr. Branham, and they begin Alex's treatment. He's gonna, after every meal, he gets an injection. He thinks they're vitamins, but it's something else. It's some drug.
An experimental serum.
Yeah, and they strap him into a chair and put lid locks on his eyes, and they show him films of ultraviolence and war, set to classical music, and they're exposing him to essentially the things that he's done. The people in the films are even dressed like droogs.
Yeah, I don't know. They add in a lot of random Nazi stuff in there, and that sort of seems almost unrelated to sort of his street life and what he's done.
Yeah, in the book, the Nazi footage that he sees is concentration camp stuff, and it's much more grim and not just the Nazis marching.
It's not just Hitler and stuff. Yeah, I read in an article that there was when Alex has the lid locks on and there's the person putting eye drops in his eyes. Evidently, that person was actually a real doctor there to monitor Mcdowell's eyes and make sure they were good.
And because he got pretty bad cornea abrasion, I think.
Yeah. So they brought in a real doctor to apply the eye drops and do that for those scenes.
That's interesting. That's a bit of trivia I didn't know.
Yeah, but I guess you, Wikipedia.
I guess you'd want an actual medical professional doing it and not
just a random extra.
Yeah, What's the gaffer or the key grip? Get him over here.
Yeah. I mean, when you're thinking about that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so it has this unexpected, unintended consequence of he's supposed to be getting an involuntary negative physiological response when he thinks about violence, but they're also giving him that same response when he listens to classical music now, because
specifically the ninth.
Yeah, the ninth symphony, fourth movement or something like that.
Yeah, and so he basically he's cured, and they bring him out to parade him in front of an audience.
That's literally the same words I used. Yeah, they demonstrate the success of the technique.
And they have this guy who's clearly like an insult comic or something.
right.
And there's like ridiculing him and trying to get him to attack him. And the moment when he actually raises Alex's ire and he's gonna attack him, he kind of shuts down.
Mm-hmm. I said they made him into a literal bootlicker because the guy makes him lick the sole of his boot, and then they truck out a pretty young lady, yeah, and he wants to reach up and grab her. Scene that was homaged brilliantly in The Simpsons with Bart reaching for a pair of cupcakes, everything, all his negative impulses make him feel sick.
Yeah, and they basically are like, he's like, did I do good? Did I pass? And they're like, yes, you did great.
Mm-hmm. He had a great. There was every once in a while I quoted some of the dialogue I really liked. While he was doing the Ludovico technique, he says, "It's funny how the colors of the real world only seem really real when you video them on a screen."
Yeah, I remember that line, and it's kind of interesting how things seem more brilliant on the screen.
Things are more real when you're watching a fake version of them.
Yeah.
That's a weird thing, but I think it's a really astute observation.
Yeah.
The politics of this movie are never very clear to me, which I think is interesting. I have no idea what political party the minister belongs to, because we get into some political intrigue in a bit. Mm-hmm. And there's two rival parties. I don't know who's the Liberal Party and who's the Conservative Party.
Well, I think it's more like the minister is part of the fascism. He's part of the power. And the other group are part of the dissidents, whatever they may be.
Yeah.
It seemed like there's sort of like the power and then those who are not in power that are trying to dethrone them.
Right.
And that seems, it doesn't seem like they actually give much in the way of political beliefs, just sort of like
the power is bad.
Yeah, the fascists, the power, they're bad, and we want to dethrone them.
Yeah, and so my last note on that segment was they shoot that scene with the girl. They shoot it from Russ Meyer called it the worm's eye view, where you're looking up at the powerful woman. And I think that's intentional. They're referencing the juvenile delinquent films, exploitation movies of the previous decades, and using the tropes from those. And also the prison chaplain, it's the only good person in the entire movie.
Yeah, at first I thought that guy was suspect. Like, he was like, maybe, is this guy a weirdie or whatever? But no, it actually turns out that he's altruistic, and he doesn't think brainwashing is good, and he thinks that helping people is the way to do it. And, like, he turns out to be the only good person. Everyone else is garbage.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the next scene, Alex's garbage parents.
Part 3, after prison. Yeah. So Alex returns to the DeLarge family unannounced, and he discovers his folks have rented out his room to a lodger named Joe.
Who's basically their new son.
Yeah, they've got a new, better son.
Yeah.
I wrote my notes. Joe's a creep. And
yeah, he's a weird guy. He's like putting his arm around the mom, this old lady. And
it's gross. It's Joe ends up getting in trouble with the law in the book. But, the movie, like you said,
4-hour cut.
The 4-hour cut, we get the whole downfall of Joe, I'm sure. But I'm just fine to not see any more Joe. I just really disliked him right from the start.
Yeah, I was like, how dare you rent your son's room out to Joe? And then when your son comes back, you basically put him out on the streets.
Yeah, he finds out the police took all of his possessions because of a law. Basically, they're sold off to compensate victims.
They sold his 4,000-pound record player?
Yep. You know? And that's some in the book. It's specifically to take care of the cats because all those cats were left when he killed that lady. Yeah. And so the money all went to secure care for those cats.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, 4,000-pound turntable. I'd support that, though. The cats were orphaned by this monster.
Crime victim compensation is real.
But his snack, Basil, died. Mm-hmm. He had an unfortunate accident that's not elaborated on.
Yeah, that was sad.
So
that was a nice little ball python.
Yeah, and Basil is basically there as a troll. Because that's not something from the book, but Malcolm McDowell is afraid of snakes.
Oh.
And so Kubrick just thought it was funny to have him have a pet snake. So that's just there to make him squirm a little bit.
Wow. I guess, at least we know that Kubrick has a sense of humor.
Right. And so with no place to stay, our humble narrator goes out into the world and he runs into one of his past victims, the unhoused guy from earlier.
So right here at this moment, before he runs into the old guy that he beat up before, I was thinking to myself, I was looking at my watch. I was pulling out my phone and I was like, is this gonna be over? I feel like this movie has gone on too long. I'm tired of the story of Alex. I don't care what happens to him next. That's my mental state.
Okay. Does it change at all now as he starts getting his comeuppance?
I enjoy the next few scenes, but it's tainted, and I'll tell you why as we get to it.
Okay, so he finds himself on the receiving end of a kicking from the unhoused masses, and he gets picked up by some familiar coppers. It's Georgie and Dim. Of course, the Droogs have become coppers.
And I just think that having, like, lawless thugs don uniforms and continue to be lawless thugs that could be modern commentary. But I also hate it because I hate the idea of glorifying renegade policing. Like anytime you have a movie where the hero is a cop who does things his own way and doesn't play by the rules, I think that's bad. And I think that having these guys just literally assault him and leave him out in the country to die nearly drowned is like, that's not good. We don't want cops to do that. But it's no surprise.
Yeah.
It's standard.
I don't think this is not Lethal Weapon and we're not supposed to be rooting for the renegade cop or Dirty Harry, or whatever. Any of those things where you have a cop that's a murderer and is over the top violent and he's the hero of the movie. This is really supposed to be a commentary on society. Like,
just how they take bad violent young men and make them into policemen.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most this will be controversial, I guess, but it's one of the most true one of the things that rings the most true in the whole movie.
Sure.
So yeah, as you said, they take him out. I said they give him the state sanctioned ultraviolence out in the woods, and leave him out there, and he goes stumbling for help and winds up at a strangely familiar home. Again, all caps, because there's that neon sign that says home.
Yeah, it's the writer's house.
Oof.
And he goes in there and there's the crippled writer in his wheelchair and there's an oddly familiar looking big muscle man. And I'm like, who's this guy? And I'm thinking to myself and I look and I go, that's Darth Vader.
Is David Prowse?
Yes.
Oh my God. I didn't even look that up.
That's David Prowse.
David Prowse has the shortest shorts that I've ever.
Yeah, and he's at that time he was cast because he's a professional bodybuilder.
Wow. Okay, that's why he looks so familiar. Yeah, I mean, what a hunk.
Yeah. So you have a hunky Darth Vader as the manservant.
Yeah, young Darth Vader. He's not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he's even been Frankenstein's monster yet at this point.
Yeah, this was like an early break into cinema.
Well, that's good job. Good job finding the things I missed.
Yeah, that was I just saw him and I was like, that guy looks familiar. That nose is iconic.
Yeah. So, as you say, he's the assistant for Frank Alexander. because this super modernist house has a lot of floating stairs in it, and he needs Darth Vader to carry him up and down the stairs.
Yeah, he can't get up and down them, so he has a dude do it for him.
Yeah, and he doesn't immediately recognize Alex.
No.
Because they used to wear maskies when they would do the ultraviolence.
He had on a mask, and so he looked different, and he's actually pretty kind. He gets Alex a bath, and he puts him up, and
he's kind, but he has an ulterior motive in that he wants to use him as a political pawn against the party in power.
Because he was the victim of police violence, and so he wants to parade that out.
But Alex is a ding-dong, and while he's sitting in the bathtub, he just absentmindedly starts singing in the Rain again.
He's like, I'm going to sing my favorite rape song. In the place where I raped.
Yes. And Mr. Alexander hears that, has a PTSD moment, and, ends up drugging Alex and torturing him.
Yeah, he gives him wine with slips him a Mickey, and then he starts playing the symphony.
Yeah, and he drives Alex to attempt to snuff himself by jumping out of a window.
Yeah, and I just thought to myself, good.
Yeah,
I hope you break your neck. You're a bad person.
Yeah, it was, but it was unsuccessful. He jumped from not high enough a height, and Alex awakes in hospital in traction to the sounds of his attending nurse getting the old in out from his attending physician.
Yeah, of course there's more nudity in this movie, because why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? They were just seeing the limits of what you could do. This is only when you started being allowed to have nudity.
Okay.
So it's like, this is supposed to be a limit-pushing film. He gets a visit from his now sympathetic parents, a chipper blue-haired psychiatrist, and finally the Minister of the Interior shows up, and he's wanting to politically spin this, because while Alex has been in a coma, the rival party has been spinning it about how cruel the government is, that they've done this to this young man. He's wanting to spin it back the other way, and they've reversed Alex's treatment. They're going to get him a good government job. They bring him back his turntable and a couple of big speaker stacks, and Alex has another one of his debaucherous fantasies where he's having sex with a lovely young Devotchka in the snow while there's a cheering crowd of Edwardian gentry watching him. And he says, "I was cured, all right." Roll credits.
Yeah, and during this end scene where the blue-haired or purple-haired psychologist is talking to him and showing him pictures and having him just say the first thing that comes to mind, that's where one of the most iconic lines from the movie comes from, which is "No time for the old in-out, love, just here to read the meter."
Yep.
That's from that moment, and when he said it, I couldn't help but smile, because it's just kind of it's an iconic line.
For us.
Sure.
For us it is. I don't know if it is in real life, but certainly you and I used to say that constantly.
All the time. No time for the old in-out.
Yeah. I don't know why, of this whole movie, that and the word horror show, which I still use to this day.
Sure.
No time for the old in-out, love, I'm just here to read the meter. We would say that all the time and crack each other up.
That's a good saying. I think anybody could say that. I mean, it's if you take anything away from this podcast, you should say that more often.
Yeah, I wrote that in my notes because I too remember enjoying saying that all the time.
Yeah, it's a good one. And I just feel like the end of this movie, how it kind of ends on a sex fantasy where Alex is like triumphant and ends with a good life. I'm just like, man, what a letdown.
So the book takes it one step further, and there is one more chapter beyond this.
Was this the unpublished chapter that was later published after the initial that hadn't been published in the UK? And
right.
Then,
That is correct.
The author published the book, and they omitted the last chapter because the editors thought that it didn't vibe with the rest of the story.
It doesn't.
And so but the author stuck to his guns, and later publishings of the book include the last chapter.
Yes. And the final chapter is really bizarre because it essentially mirrors the first chapter, where it opens up in the Kurova Milk Bar again. and Alex has a new gang of droogs that he's the leader of. They dress in the height of fashion, which is new outfits. It's no longer the old droog outfit. They have a new droog outfit.
Okay.
Because it's, several years later. He's now 18. And
so like 35.
Yeah. And he's basically just sort of getting bored with this lifestyle. He has this job. He has a government job. He works in the National Gramo Disc Archive in the music side. So basically curating records.
Okay.
And he loves his job and he makes good money. And he just gets bored with being a thug and eventually doesn't participate anymore. He sends them out to go do a robbery without him and then runs into his old buddy Fred, I think. The one surviving droog. And Fred's gotten married and has like a grown-up life.
Is this Beret Droog?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And Alex decides that that's what he wants, is to grow up and have a family. And that's the end of the book.
That's a terrible final chapter.
It's really weird because it's like it just sort of...
It gives him a happily ever after?
Well, it gives him the intent of a happily ever after, right? Like that he's going to go look for that. And that basically, that this was just all a phase, and you can spend your teenage years as a monster.
Just raping and murdering and robbing your way across England.
Uh-huh. And then when you turn 18, be like, you know what?
I'm done with that.
Yeah, now I'm just going to be a dad.
All right. Well, I'm glad it's over. What worked for you? What were your personal highlights?
Cinematography. Mm-hmm. Shouts to John Alcott. Production design, John Barry. Costume design, Milena Canonero. Superb. Across this movie is shot exquisitely. Mm-hmm. It is designed exquisitely. It's like this ultra modernist in the late 60s, early 70s style. Everything is iconic. And like, if you look online, all these like pieces of furniture and stereo equipment and stuff that are shown in this movie either are still produced to this day because people want them, or you can get reproductions of them.
It's all very intentional and really well done. The
costume design from Canonero is excellent. Everything was super iconic. It's very evocative of the British youth culture of the day then, and then inspired the future British youth culture. Malcolm McDowell, I think, gives a great performance. He has this like kind of like a impish grin thing that he does. This movie would be unwatchable without him. Basically, he's the only thing that saves it from being just I don't know, like torture.
A really trashy art film.
Yeah. And the politics of it. I said that Kubrick and Burgess both have this sort of disdain for partisan politics and the political establishment. And I like that. I like that it's never clear what the political views of the two rival parties are. They're both terrible, and they both use the working class like pawns.
Yeah, for sure. I'm with you on that.
What about for you?
I mean, I could just literally say the exact same things you did. And I kind of mentioned it earlier, how I just thought this movie was visually stunning. And there were every single scene that you look at, everything from when they break into the cat lady's house to when you see his jail cell, to when he returns back to his parents' apartment, or when he's in the lobby of the apartments. Literally every set and every scene is just, there's so much stuff to look at. It's so beautiful. Like, the set production is so amazing. The costuming, everything's intentional. Like the two girls in the record store, the other people that you see as they pan into the record store.
Yeah, there's a bunch of members of the Kubrick family as the other patrons of the record store.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And they're all dressed really cool. And like when you are in the milk bar, when you see the extras, and then those corpo people that are there, their clothes are all very intentionally chosen. I really enjoyed how the different gangs have their own cool, distinct look. Their little hoodlum uniforms or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't mention it. I had it in my notes, but this is in 1971, and they're filming in 1970. So this is the end of the skinheads versus bikers first wave of that. The Droogs are skinheads, and Billy Boy's Droogs are bikers.
Yeah,
like that's very, very intentional. They're very, very much evoking the British youth cults of that moment.
Yeah, and I just thought all of that was really well done. And I mean, the cinematography, you mentioned it. It's just beautifully shot. The lighting is also good. Like this movie's it's just made really well. The craftsmanship is so good. Like Kubrick is a great director. I just could not stand the novel he based it on.
So that brings us to what didn't work. What didn't work for you?
The whole first third of the movie, just constant. It's just like sexual assault and rape after sexual assault and rape. And it's just like, come on, man. This is not enjoyable. I don't like this. I don't watch slasher movies because I don't like watching people being eviscerated.
Yeah.
I don't like watching people getting raped. It's just like, man, this sucks. You're making a movie that I want to love just unenjoyable for me. And then I felt like it was long with throwaway scenes, stupid things that didn't need to be in there, like his fantasies here and there, and little, I don't know, just moments that were extra. The whole scene with the record store girls was just extra. You didn't need that.
That's true.
It was not plot developing.
I think that's only there so that there is a scene of him just being charming.
Just being a normal guy.
Yeah. Or even
right,
charming,
that's
in
not
quotes.
really normal. But
being
yeah.
a cad.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So basically what didn't work was the novel that this was based on. I just didn't like the storytelling. I didn't like the story. I don't like that this horrible human being ends up with a positive ending. It doesn't give you any satisfaction or closure. It's just not. He doesn't have redeeming qualities. He's not like a Batman figure who does bad things to bad people. He does bad things to good people.
Yeah,
and
really to any people.
Yeah, he's just a bad guy. And so this is an art film where they're really trying to push the boundaries of what could be in a film and whatnot. And I feel like some of their artistic statements were just things that weren't for me. I didn't really enjoy it. I don't think I'd watch this movie again.
It's interesting because Burgess really does not love the novel either, or I don't know if he's still alive or not, but in his later years, he sort of really did not like that this was the book that he was the most well-known for, because he felt like he wrote better things later, and this is a really immature novel.
I mean, it seems ridiculous that if his wife was raped and he wrote a movie that literally glorified rapists.
Yeah.
He wrote a book. It's like, what is wrong with you, dude? Wouldn't you write something where that dude gets the ultimate heinous bad ending?
Yeah, that's the weird thing, is because I do think that it is somewhat, there's a bit of a revenge fantasy in there, because Alex just gets shit hammered.
I mean, he gets beat up, but
who
hasn't been beat up?
Yeah, but he also gets tortured. You know, like,
sure,
he gets a lot of bad stuff that happens to him. I was in the
military, so some of that stuff seems tame to me. I went to a gas chamber.
But did they put lid locks on your eyes?
No, but you had to take your gas mask off, and I did it more than once. I'm not saying that the psychological conditioning Alex went through was nothing, but in the end of the movie, it's undone. They put the toys back in the box, like an anime movie.
That is the weird choice, right? That you go through the revenge fantasy, right, where he gets his comeuppance. But then he does get a happy ending at the end. Yeah. And you're like, so what was the message?
If he lived his life as like a simp that was always beat up and victimized, I'd be like, okay.
Yeah, then there is some justice then.
But no, he's back to being a horrible rapist.
Weird. Okay.
So what didn't work for you?
What didn't work for me? I wrote this, the sexual violence is really hard to take. As a kid, I grew up watching really violent movies, and I was fairly desensitized.
Okay.
So that the first time I saw this when we were teenagers and we watched it, and teenage boys lack empathy, period.
Yeah. We were pretty garbage too.
Yeah. Not as garbage as these boys.
We were
but,
not criminals.
Yeah. But I didn't bump up against it as much. It wasn't, until later, like I said, Lisa was very upset by this movie when I showed it to her because, like, oh, let's watch this great film, and women are getting raped, like, right off the bat, and she's crying, and I'm like, I don't understand. This is art. Why can't you have some separation? Now, as an adult, I watch it, and I guess I have matured, and I have empathy, and I don't like seeing this stuff.
Yeah.
And there's no substantive females in the entire movie. They're all just scenery. They're part of the mise en scène of the movie.
They're token victims for the most part.
Mm-hmm. And it's really gross. And it's we've mentioned this earlier. It's really upsetting that as you go exploring the classics, how much you see this sort of thing. And you're like,
can we just enshrine Man of Steel as a modern classic? Because I just really like that movie.
Superman wouldn't do this.
No, he would not do this.
Yeah. And so, that's it. I guess kind of my final thought there was just that this has got to be why the movie's never been remade in an era when every IP gets trotted out. Like, why Warner Brothers has never been, let's do a remake of Clockwork Orange and get some of that good nostalgia money. Because in 2021, if you dropped this movie, canceled. Whoever directed it is canceled.
I think you could make a Clockwork Orange about drugs and gang violence and about mental conditioning and state oppression. I think you could reframe it in the broad strokes, but you could not make it beat for beat.
No. I have some ideas on how you would remake it also.
Let's do it.
We're remake Clockwork Orange. Let's just go ahead and tackle one of the...
We're going to have to set up an Indiegogo. Here's two podcasters with no movie experience. We're going to remake a classic.
So
that actually takes us to, you already mentioned it, our final thoughts segment. So what are your final thoughts along with your rating? And I will then reveal IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, and Metacritic after we both rated it.
My final thoughts. I watched it twice. I watched it just, like a clean watch through where I just went for the ride, and then I watched it in my protracted version where I'm taking my notes and writing out my stuff. And I just I kind of went on a roller coaster of the being disturbed by it, but then after getting more depth of understanding about Kubrick and stuff, really just appreciating why this is such a lauded film. And so ultimately I came out pretty positive on the movie just because of how well assembled and well shot it is.
And remember, we only rate movies in whole stars now.
We're making that transition, and so I suspect we're going to be very different here, and I'm going to say it's a 4-star.
Okay. I thought that's what you were going to say.
Yeah, 4-star film.
Okay.
But it is a disturbing movie, and it is not, when I say it's 4-star quality filmmaking, but this is not for everyone because it's a rough movie. Okay. Not rough, tough. It's smooth. So
I have some similar thoughts. Like, I think that there are really good parts about this movie. There are the artistic style, the subculture impact, the statement on the future of government control, and I think that those statements are all valid and interesting, and there's a lot of really beautiful artistic moments in the movie. But at the end of the day, I didn't enjoy watching it. I did not like this movie. I don't recommend this movie to anyone unless you want to pretend that you're cool or you are an aspiring filmmaker that wants to watch expert level cinematography, set production, and costuming. So I think that those parts of the movie are very much 4-star elements, but I think they based it on a 2-star novel, and so I go that this is a 3-star movie. I generally don't recommend it to people unless you're just a film nerd. Like your general audience, like if I'm just talking to a person, hey, I heard of that movie. Don't watch it. It's about rape. Like that's what I would say. That's what the movie's about.
I would also, I'd say the same, not the exact same thing, but I'd say that about 2001 also, because that's a ponderously slow, depressing movie. And so it's like, as a film student, if you're into that, you're into cinema, you're a cinephile, you have to watch it. And there's a reason it's a classic.
Just watch something else. Watch Full Metal Jacket or something like that. Just watch better movies.
Well, we need to watch Full Metal Jacket now because I've never seen it.
Oh, it's a good movie.
You think that now, but
That's
what about
true.
what about when we watch it?
I haven't seen it in 15 years. Yeah. So who knows? So yeah, I gave it a 3-star. You gave it a 4. That doesn't surprise me. I thought you would like it better than I did. I thought you might actually come down to 3, given the amount of
disturbing
well,
content.
this is a grossly misogynistic movie.
Definitely.
And I think that calling it a 4-star movie is hard. You have to put like 7 asterisks after that 4.
Yes.
And that sucks. I don't want to put my name next to a 4 on this movie. That's just not where I want to be. A 3 is almost too much for me.
Yeah, I expected you to go with it.
I almost went with a 2, but the thing is it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Kubrick did such a good job directing bad novel.
I said, I don't think I'm going out on a limb here to say Kubrick knows how to shoot a film.
Yeah.
It's like he knows where to put the camera. It's really remarkable.
Yeah, he knows about lighting. He knows about setting a shot up, etc. So yeah. So not surprisingly, this is a darling on the ratings. I mean, it's got an 8.3 IMDb. It's got an 86% Rotten Tomatoes and a 77 Metacritic.
So that was not the case when it came out, though. The New York critical establishment, like the New York Press Association or whatever, just tore this movie up. So
Sure.
it is over time that it's reached this elevated status.
When people understand the impact that it had, and they look at it through really tinted glasses. And I came into this really wanting to like it. Like this was something that I thought was right up my alley. Like the old ultraviolence, I thought would be enjoyable. But it turned out that they shouldn't have called it ultraviolence. It's just sexual violence. And that's not really my thing.
Oh, we got an episode title.
What?
Too old for the ultraviolence.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes Nick and I we labor over an episode title, but this one's good. So I think that kind of wraps up our thoughts on A Clockwork Orange, unless you have anything else.
No, we just about covered it. So that's a wrap.
All right.
Welcome back, divers. It's time for our final segment, the one where I ask Dave, what are you into right now?
Well, not surprisingly, I'm into Dungeons and Dragons. I always am. But a new book came out, and it's one that I've been thirsting for it.
Oh, what's this?
It's Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft.
Oh, yes, finally.
Yeah, so
vampires and Frankensteins and
all that stuff. So yeah, Ravenloft is a old school adventure that was originally published for 2nd edition, I believe. I have the original box set, and I have every reprinting of anything Ravenloft through the years.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a campaign. It was originally an adventure, and then it became a campaign setting, and it's sort of a gothic horror themed thing. And I just always loved it. And they published Ravenloft for 5th edition, and then they actually did a reprint of it with full maps and the tarot deck and everything, called the Taroka deck. But it's in a big coffin box, and I have that, and I've loved it. But they recently put out this new book, Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, and this is a little bit different. This is a little more, it's not focused on the lore of the vampire Strahd von Zarovich, the domain lord of Barovia, kind of the Transylvanian style domain.
Right.
This is more like, how do you run horror D&D? In all of its types. And it has a whole bunch, so Barovia is the main domain for the original adventure, but they have 16 more domains that are all detailed. And then they have another several pages of blurbs of ideas for domains that you could flesh out yourself, with the included rules for creating new domains of your own.
Oh, wow.
So you can create your own campaign setting that's set for horror, and they have all this cool material based on different type of horror genres, like body horror, cosmic horror, dark fantasy, ghost stories, all this stuff, and ways to implement it into your game so that it seems like really cool and really moody. So everything from like a zombie apocalypse D&D setting to a haunted carnival D&D setting. It's
weird.
All this different stuff that you can do. And it's not just a DM tool, because I'm mostly a dungeon master. But it's also got tons of cool stuff for player characters. So it has a section on creating a custom lineage of your own race, which lets you do your own kind of varied take on something else. But then it has Dampiers, which are people with vampiric lineage, but it's kind of a template you plop on top of another existing race. So you could be a human who's a Dampier, or an elf, or whatever.
Like it's a blade.
Yeah, you get to be a blade. And they get cool vampire-y stuff, like a vampiric bite, some spider climbing, and stuff like that. And then there's the Hexbloods, which are people with a hag bloodline, and they have all this kind of witchcraft-style stuff with like scrying and illusions and whatnot. And then the one for Nick, the Reborn. The Frankenstein's monster. And it's a really versatile template that you can put on any race, of course. And it can cover anything from a stitched together flesh golem style Frankenstein all the way to, with the same stats, just different roleplay attached, to someone who's died and came back from the dead and it has one foot still in the grave. And so it's just so cool. And I love it. And I just thought that was just so cool when I saw it. There's other things in there that players might come across, like dark bargains that you can make with these powers that give you these different abilities and stuff. And then there's only 2 new subclass options. I was really surprised that there weren't more. There's the Bard College of Spirits, where they conjure spirits and they tell tales of the dead and stuff like that. It's interesting. And then one that seemed like an obvious one, the Warlock Patron, the Undead. So you make a deal with an ancient, powerful undead creature like a lich or something, and you get these powers that make you all necro and
like a Renfield, or more powerful than a Renfield.
More powerful than a Renfield for sure. And then, of course, there are things like new background traits and new backgrounds, like the Haunted one or the Investigator. And when you make a D&D character, you have there's tables with like personality traits, ideals, etc.
Right.
There's whole new ones of that for people from horrific horror-based settings.
Oh, weird. Cool.
Lots of cool stuff. And then a bunch of cool new background stuff that you can use, like curses and rules for fear and stress and haunted traps, a bunch of monsters, a bunch of NPCs stuff. So overall, this book is like an amazing toolkit that came to me at the perfect time, because I'm revising my own campaign setting. I'm not, of course, going to make every corner of the campaign setting have a horror element, but there's definitely going to be some places that use some of this material.
And it just kind of gives you an architecture on how to how to do it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense.
And it's
cool.
it's really cool. So like if you're playing a game and even a regular non-horror based D&D game, and someone's like, "Oh yeah, I want to play a guy who was struck dead by lightning and woke up and blah blah blah," and you could play a reborn. You could.
Cool.
All this stuff is totally doable. In even a normal campaign. It's a super cool book. There's the regular cover, which you can get, of course, from Amazon or anywhere else. But Wizards of the Coast always does a cool thing where you can buy only from local game stores. You have to buy it in person at the game store. The variant cover, and it has this really cool, awesome alternate cover art, and it's
just for pre-orders, right?
No, I mean, some stores will have a few of them in stock, maybe, but most of the time stores like get a waiting list. But the moment this book was announced, I think in March,
you definitely mentioned it before.
I was like, okay, I instantly contacted my local game store. I put my name on the list, and I was the first one. And then the day it came out, I was there.
So which, this won't be that interesting to anyone that doesn't live here, but which gaming store won the chance to get your business on this? Because we have a few good prospects.
Yeah, we have a few good ones, but generally when I'm looking for something close and easy to get to, so I went to Dice Age.
Okay.
I like a lot. There's a couple places in Portland that I knew I could get it, but I wanted to try to support a smaller shop. Yeah.
Very cool.
Fate and Fury is another place that I might have gone, but I've had really good luck with Dice Age getting on their list for the alternate covers, because I'm a dweeb. I like those variant covers, especially if it's a book I'm going to use a lot.
Yeah, it just looks cool, and it looks books. We talked about this the other day about things that you collect, and books never look bad. Like having a good shelf full of books always looks good, even if they're geek books. It still looks like you're smart.
Yeah. Oh, this one tells you how to play a half vampire. Yeah. So this is a really good book. If you play D&D, if you're a person who is interested in D&D, this is a must-have in my opinion. I don't think every DM will probably implement all of this stuff. Yeah. But I think that there are at least a few things that can be implemented in any game.
Very cool.
So that's what I've been into lately. How about you? What are you into right now?
So I just started a series, and a lot of the times the things that I'm into, it's I'm throwing this out there to the divers, but I'm not expecting Dave to like it.
Sure.
This one this is a Dave recommendation. I think Dave will really like this. So we know from in one of the early episodes, we talked about the movie Be Water, the documentary about Bruce Lee. So Bruce Lee had been developing a TV show. He had an 8-page treatment for a TV show called The Warrior that he was set to star in, or that he, wanted to star in. And it's about a Chinese immigrant in America in the Old West.
Wasn't that Kung Fu?
And then
David Carradine?
Yes. And so ABC essentially passed on the show and then stole the idea and did it with David Carradine instead of Bruce Lee.
A white guy.
A white guy, but squinting his eyes. Yeah. Oof. Anyways, 2019, from Jonathan Trooper, the creator of the show Banshee, and based on the writings of Bruce Lee, we have Warrior from Cinemax. And it streams on HBO Max. There's 2 seasons.
How did this pass me by?
I don't know.
2 seasons.
2 seasons. It's produced by Shannon Lee and the daughter of Bruce Lee, and Justin Lin, director of the Fast and the Furious, many of the Fast and the Furious films.
Wow.
And starring Andrew Koji as Assam, the lead character that Bruce Lee would have played. It's the show. It's the show that Bruce Lee always wanted to make. And it is so good.
Now I have something to watch.
Yeah, I really like this show. It's like, elevator pitch, tone wise, Deadwood meets Peaky Blinders.
Okay.
With Kung Fu.
I like both those shows.
Yeah. Oh, it's good. It's really, really good. I'm
surprised you kept your mouth shut on this one.
Oh yeah, I knew I wanted to drop it here on you. I didn't want to. I didn't want to talk.
Normally you'd have chatted me a recommend on a show I'd like.
No, because I knew this one. I was like, from the first episode, I love Andrew Koji, he's not doing like a Bruce Lee impression, but he does Bruce Lee isms. They're peppered throughout the whole thing. Like his fighting style is very Jeet Kune Do, like very Bruce Lee. Okay. And there's always every episode there's little homages to Bruce Lee peppered through there if you recognize them.
Do they try to brand it as like Bruce Lee's Warrior or whatever?
No, it's not really. It does say like in the opening credits, it says based on the writings of Bruce Lee, or inspired by the writings of Bruce Lee. One of those things. He wrote an 8-page treatment. It wasn't like he wrote a script Bible.
Sure, yeah.
But there's bits of it, like the characters Assam, and there's a cop called Old Bill, or something along those lines.
So it's Old West. Like how Old West? Are we talking like full on Deadwood Old West, like Frontier?
It is that time period, but it's in San Francisco.
Okay, which was pretty developed compared to Deadwood.
So it is in late 1800s, in the run up to the Chinese Exclusion Act. So the setting is when the height of anti-Chinese racism.
And Assam is Chinese,
yes,
of course. Okay.
So,
that
anyways,
sounds awesome.
It's
on HBO Max.
It's on HBO Max, 2 seasons.
I'm watching it today.
I'm close to. I think I've got like 2, maybe 3 more episodes on season 1 because I've just been like. Anytime I wasn't watching Clockwork Orange, I've been watching Warrior.
Yeah, I bet Lisa's been glad that you're watching.
She likes Warrior a lot better. Yeah.
I'm gonna see what Carrie says about
she did the. She was kind of like, oh, it's Kung Fu thing, and she's like, I can be in and out, and then like she's like, wait, there's real history in this, and I was like, oh yeah, it's about the Chinese Exclusion Act, and she's like, oh, I love historical drama, and then she sat down, and watched a little bit of the political part of it, and then when it went back to Kung Fu, she's like, oh, I go back to what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then I won't spend as much time on this, but another show that just totally surprised me because it was so much funnier than I thought it was going to be is Modoc on Hulu.
Modoc, never heard of it.
So Modoc is a weird Marvel villain. He's sort of a big floating head with little tiny arms and legs.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so it's a stop motion animation show created by Patton Oswalt and Jordan Blum, who worked on American Dad.
Okay.
And it's animated by Stupid Buddy Studios that do Robot Chicken.
Okay.
And it is hilarious, man. Like, okay. Here, controversial opinion. Patton Oswalt's really funny, right?
Yeah, he is funny.
Yeah. It's like, it exceeded my expectations, which were non-existent. It's hilarious. And it's super geeky, but it has more heart than you expect it to.
Huh. Yeah, how do you have heart in Modoc?
He's got a family.
Oh. Okay.
But it is really funny, and it's crazy violent. Like people get their arms zapped off, and there's lots of blood and guts.
Okay, so it's kind of like Invincible in that way.
Yeah, but it is absurdist comedy too.
Okay.
But anyways, I won't spend forever on Modoc. The big recommendation is Warrior, but also Modoc is really funny.
So I have a mini recommendation as well. Since
all right.
Nick is going too, and we're under time on this episode anyway. So everybody, all the divers know that I'm a Critical Role super fan. I've seen every episode of the whole thing. There's like hundreds of episodes, and they're all several hours long. So that should tell you something. Campaign 2, which is the current campaign, is ending this week when this episode drops at the beginning of June. It's ending on Thursday. It's the finale of Campaign 2. So if you have always been a person who's like, man, I'm kind of interested in that, but holy shit, the backlog, I understand. Campaign 2 is ending. They're going to probably do a week where they do like a Q&A thing and they talk to fans about, because there's all kinds of fan theories and all this stuff. It's a lot of stuff. And then soon, they haven't even announced it yet, but we know there's going to be a Campaign 3 because the cast has talked about it on their Twitter and stuff. Campaign 3 will be starting at some point. So if you've ever been interested in being current with the biggest live play Dungeons and Dragons show in the world, it's far and away the most popular and best. And I've sampled a lot of them. now's the time to get interested.
Will it be all new characters?
They start all new characters. Same dungeon master, same players.
Right.
But they all start new characters, usually at level 1. And it's going to be, we don't know at all any of the premise of the next campaign because they're not going to start spoiling the next campaign before they even ended this one.
Right.
But this campaign, I believe that they're 16th or 17th level at this point. Mm-hmm. No, I think they're 16th because they don't have 9th level spells, which you get at 17th level. It's about to end, and they're facing the big bad villain guy, etc. That they've been, which turns out is one of the PCs that died on episode in the early campaign. He came back and became the villain of the campaign. Yeah, it's fun. So if you're curious or interested in Critical Role, start paying attention now, and you'll get you'll be rewarded for jumping on board. This is a good time to do so.
Since you bring it up, what's going on with the Critical Role animated series? Because that's a thing, right?
Yeah, it's still being... so it was originally crowdfunded. They started with one episode that they wanted to do, and then it ended up... They made over $11 million on the crowdfunding, so it's going to be one season, and then after they saw that it had such fan support, Amazon actually picked it up.
Right.
And they're going to do it for, I think, 1 or 2 more seasons after that. And it's currently being made by Titmouse Studios.
Okay.
And so Titmouse Studios working on it. They do like monthly vlogs where Sam, one of the cast members, goes through and talks to the animators and the showrunners and all this stuff. So it's underway. It's being currently made. So that's going to be the first kind of big budget animated Dungeons and Dragons content made in a very long time.
Is it based on the first campaign or the second campaign?
It's based on campaign 1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So those characters.
And I love campaign 1. Like,
cool.
Campaign 2 is really fun and I really like the characters, but campaign 1 is the shit. Like, it's a lot more casual in their play and it's a little less produced.
Yeah.
And if you go back and watch all the episodes, which are free on YouTube, it's, or on podcast form.
Hey, while you're on YouTube, why don't you subscribe to this podcast if you haven't yet?
Yeah, we're on YouTube, and it's actually a really easy place to consume our stuff. So check it out. Anyway, yeah. So the series is going to be on Amazon, and I will do a whole big thing on that when it comes out on this podcast.
Sounds good. Well, why don't you give them the call to action?
All right. Please subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher and YouTube, and rate us generously. A 5-star review costs you nothing and means everything to us.
You can find us on all social media platforms across the entire metaverse as Deep Dive the Meta. We are on an Instagram, which is my preferred platform. We're on Twitter, which Dave likes, but we're also on Pinterest, which no one likes.
Well, I guess this is really goodbye.
Don't say goodbye. Say good journey.